The Diary of Thoughts, Part 12. Madness, Intelligence and Ignorance, written by Carlos Pacheco. Talking about madness is always a very sensitive subject, like others that are related to everything that doesn't match the conventional behavior or the standards of social life. The word madness is related to everything that is not logic and is not common. Of course, there are several types of madness. Some people are mad without noticing that fact because it's the only way they can react or manifest themselves. Madness can be found in multiple situations in life depending on each particular context. Moments of complete madness can be found on a battlefield, as war itself is already a non-assumed state of madness. It can also be found in aggressive acts and manifestations in some family contexts as domestic violence or emotional abuse. Madness can be found when people get drunk and lose their senses about reasonability. Madness can be generated in global terms while causing economical crisis on purpose. Ideas about power and greed are also generated from states of madness as megalomania. This phobia is one of the particularities about dictators that lived in their world of madness. It's sorrowful and irresponsible to verify that several countries were clearly delivered to the hands of mad leaders. Madness is the cause of multiple social and economical problems in society. In business terms, there are thousands of companies that go bankrupt due to the madness of their administrators, creating millions of unemployed people along with their families. Madness is directly related to irresponsibility, as those who practice it are completely far away from reality. But there is another kind of madness, the kind that leads to constructive reasoning, things, and actions, the ones that we can define as, when the madness touches hidden realities. In this case, I am talking about a certain use of madness as a label when some people find it's not convenient that certain madness becomes a genial manifestation. The same way, society, in general, doesn't accept different behaviors from those who can create doubts and the awakening of contradictions in their minds. As I said before, most people are afraid of everything that they can understand. In this case, ingenuity can become a nasty element for the majority of life in society, especially when governments control people, control their intellectual evolution. The final result of ingenuity, yes, it has to be profitable for most of the society, but while being matured and created by mad people, it becomes the target of every single ignorant manifestation. If we consider that ingenuity has at its origin a whole structure based on logic, we'll be able to verify how creation interacts with human beings. Ingenuity is nothing but a logic chain of thoughts that can be applied to our daily existence. But sometimes, the application of that ingenuity can bring enormous problems and inner conflicts when not adapted to the right contexts, as society has to be prepared to accept it, mostly understand it. Let's assume that for a genius like Einstein, for instance, the words superfluous, trivial or ephemeral have a different meaning and importance than the majority of people. Everything is linked directly to the various perspectives of understanding realities and situations, and that conscience and awareness brings them a different behavior in society, as the actions and attitudes resulting from that self-analysis are unusual or uncommon. Within our daily lives, we deal with ordinary people but also with gifted people who, in spite of not having the adequate education and formation that would cause their evolution and development, have a different consciousness and awareness about everything that is around them. This fact causes a direct effect on their way to act and react, finally to behave, which is not very well accepted or understood by the majority of society. Eventually, they become enemies of those to whom everything has to be traditional and old-fashioned, as these forms of being in life brings them an absolute assurance about their existences, about their ignorance. In fact, ingenuity can become a frustration just by the fact that in most cases, its deliverance is not possible. An example of this situation is shown in John Travolta's movie Phenomenon. The frontiers between madness and ingenuity are very close. That's why there are so few geniuses in history. They were able to control this invisible border. There is this movie with Russell Crowe, A Beautiful Mind, that gives us the exact notion about this existing approach between madness and ingenuity, as those extremes have a common factor named overcoming limits of conventionalism, overcoming their intelligence with all the eventual emotional and psychological consequences related to that fact. There were several geniuses that were convicted for sorcery, as other people were burned alive by the church because they were considered to be heretics. These acts of prosecution mean that it's not easy to be a genius, as society in general calls us a madman or puts on us another different label. Ingenuity can be the object of several expressions. Some people can be genius in a certain domain and completely ignorant in other various subjects. It also depends on the line of reasoning of each individual. Some people have a complicated mind and look for the most difficult way to find a solution, while others go straight to the answer. Schizophrenia can be manifested by attitudes of foolishness, even madness, or by accentuated states of depression, where the victims of this disease fall in their imaginary world. But even this imaginary world can be beautiful at the same time, as we can witness in Richard Gere's movie, Mr. Jones. Madness is also related to intelligence, as some people can handle their potentialities and capacities at the point that it will create inner conflicts difficult to be surmounted. It means that intelligence can eventually become madness. Every single behavior that is not understood by society is labeled as act of foolishness or act of madness. Meanwhile, there are mere different behaviors that aren't necessarily right or wrong by the fact of that same difference. The act of talking alone is considered to some people as an act of madness, even by some clinical definitions about the symptoms of schizophrenia. This analysis is made independently from the fact that almost everybody talks about themselves while being alone. Many movie references can be referred concerning that area of alleged madness and that I could mention. Some represent the logic madness that some people are afraid of. The kind of madness that translates messages of individual freedom, friendship, love, all this along with a fundamental word called comprehension about human faults and failures. One example regarding all these situations concerning a mixture of natural ingredients as madness, freedom, friendship, love and comprehension, even forgiveness, is the movie with Jeff Bridges and Robin Williams, The Fisher King. As we human beings are far away from being perfect, the exercise of forgiveness is essential to living in society. Also, some of us are not thinking about the consequences of our words and thoughts as they affect society around us and can cause serious conflicts in existential terms to other people. Even if we don't talk alone, we'll always think alone, so it means that all those labels created by society are uniquely restricted to certain contexts and individual interpretations coming from conventional notions about standard behaviors that are completely wrong. While still a teenager, I watched people talking about a personality that used to take the train dressed as a groom. Actually, they called him the Mad Groom. Everybody laughed while staring at this person, also when they listened to his words while talking alone on the train. One day, and by mere chance, I seated right in front of him without perceiving that, and during 25 minutes, I listened to his words and examined his behavior. Apart from the fact that this person was dressed as a groom, his words were so pure and manifested so much inner pain. In fact, he talked with his bride not present, someone he loved so much and for so many years, whom he began dating in school. Later on in their lives, they consolidated their mutual feelings and personal situations and settled the date of their marriage. Sometimes life is not fair at all, as happened to this nice person. Losing his beloved bride in half of his life, the day of his marriage was the result of a car accident. All his life lost the previous sense to exist. One way to surmount it was to create a personal world where this beloved bride would always be present. This attitude is a perfect example of what we can call a case of beautiful madness. All the people were laughing and making fun of this person while knowing about this event, were more fool and ignorant than this simple man, or simply didn't have a minimal notion about feelings and what they can do. It's far better to be a good fool than to be simply ignorant. The fact of underestimating other people's problems and situations is proof of complete foolishness itself. I always said that society is a madhouse, starting with myself and ending on others. I think this is a very honest declaration. While very young, I retained the lyrics of a Beatles well-known song, The Fool on the Hill. My wife, not only did she call me a fool but a good fool. This label is a very special way to pay you a compliment for being as you are, and at the same time a love declaration. The importance of this gift is that it doesn't only lie in the person to whom it is addressed, but also on the person that captured the real essence of that message and used it to express her feelings and admiration. Briefly, sometimes we feel good when somebody calls us a fool depending of whom and how that word it is addressed. Life in society obliges us to face acts and behaviors completely distant from any sense of logic, and manifested by temporary madness or craziness. When some people are under stress, they act in a disorderly way or express themselves in an unmeasured and irrational manner. Driving under stress, for instance, can cause that kind of reaction at the point to put in peril other people's lives. But as in any other area, madness also has its structure, its logic. There is the logical or illogical madness. The logic used by some genius and scientists was in most part logical madness, but they also had their illogical moments of their creation. This conclusion means that even creation can be apparently illogical on some occasions. Let's be clear that I'm talking about that kind of madness that people don't understand, or refuse to understand or accept. In a certain way, we are all fools lost in a crazy world. We only try to adapt mostly to the illogical, using the best logical means at our disposal to contradict that same illogical. Once again, there is that invisible balance that is a common element and factor on human life and extended to the whole universe in the first place. Some people act like fools because they think they are more intelligent than others, or the majority of individuals. This thought means that we can be intelligent but at the same time be ignorant to some extent. Intelligence doesn't forcibly obligate knowledge. Ignorance is the lack of information, sometimes the lack of necessary learning and experience in life that will bring us knowledge. There are several levels of ignorance related to each domain. But finally, the evolution of science and technology and its related dependencies represent the proof that the ultimate goal of existence is to reach a higher state of intelligence. I always said that I have certain knowledge. My intelligence can be put into question, and mostly I am a mere ignorant in the middle of millions of real intelligent human beings living on this planet. Let's not forget that man is in a confrontation with his intelligence, as evolution is a constant challenge for the human being, and society is lead to developing ideas and thoughts brought by creation, all seconds of our lives. Some people prefer to ignore their intelligence because it's more practical and comfortable like that, forgetting their capacities to contribute to the well-being of society in general. By doing that, they use other people's intelligence to achieve their goals in life. Others are simply afraid of intelligence or afraid to be ignorant or stupid. On part 2 of the present document, I mentioned the word intellectual and what it represents regarding responsibility. One thing that I would like to add to that specific subject is that the word intellect is related to intelligence, mental power along with understanding. Some people think that an engineer, a doctor, even an executive of a corporation is an intellectual, which is not true, as the word intellectually is more extensive than that. By the fact there are extremely educated people occupying important places in society by having a diploma, doesn't make them an intellectual, as their knowledge is based on acquired data and information about a specific field. The social conflicts that I mentioned in part 2 are originated by this lack of understanding about the meaning of the word intellectuality, along with all obstacles created by the human mind about different functions and roles, and its importance as they're all interdependent. In fact, to be an intellectual carries along the perception about what is not written in books, but simply about everything that is present in our daily lives, but it is presented in an invisible form. This understanding is at the origin of different ways to express that perception, those thoughts, that sensitivity about life while writing a book, painting, photographing, even while talking with other people, still transmitting that message, that line of spirit. That's why art and artists are so different, as they are real intellectuals. Still, coming back to the main subject of this chapter. Also, ignorance is entirely different from stupidity as a usual definition. We can ignore some information or simply not be able to understand it. Some people acquired a high level of studies in their lives, have a diploma, but they are ignorant as a rock. To memorize doesn't mean to understand, so there are highly educated people who are ignorant. The big problem is when we find that kind of individuals occupying important positions in society, and bringing their ignorance on our shoulders. In personal terms, I think if stupidity existed, it would be the worst disease and poorness that God would have created, and He would force human beings to touch that particular state in several moments and circumstances in our lives. There is no stupidity living in human being, unless we associate this word with nonsense, which has a completely different meaning. The most primitive and uneducated people use their intelligence to survive, which is proof that this common definition has no application at all, and sometimes they do it better than most of the educated people around them. Certainly, we can be really stupid sometimes. This sentence of mine clearly translates my opinion that stupidity doesn't exist after all, as it's just a definition that puts the word ignorance at its top level. What greater example can we have than when the so-called intelligent people lead society to wars and economical chaos? By doing so, they're not even assuring their future or the future of their next generations, which proves that they're stupid. Life is an eternal continuity of multiple events that are extended to our simple form of living beings. Continuity has to be assured in any circumstance, as it is what guarantees the future of the family generations to come. Some alleged intelligent people who rule society just don't understand the fact of being more stupid than all the others that themselves claim to be as that. After all, stupidity is nothing more than the most common word that some people use to insult another person, sometimes forgetting or ignoring that they're far more intelligent than themselves. It's sorrowful to observe when some parents call their children stupid when they didn't understand something, or simply contradicted what they were expecting from them. Or some husbands that constantly call their spouses as stupid. This behavior is a small but a big example about the stupidity that reigns in some people's minds. In fact, stupidity is related to irrationality and illogic, but in one way or another, none of us possess that ultimate answer to practice and to improve the contrary of these two last elements, as we are by nature irrational and illogical. You become stupid when you think that you're more intelligent than someone else. We become directly stupid without realizing that fact when we say stupid to another person. Isn't that deeply sad? We become stupid when we don't appreciate the ones who love us, when we mistreat members of our family, or forget about true friends, making the worst choices in our lives. We become a true stupid person when we don't know how to identify them. We can become stupid when we don't accept the intelligence of another person, still, always learning with them. Isn't it stupid when we betray our feelings because we don't have the courage to decide for ourselves and change our lives? Isn't it stupid to pretend to be or try to prove that we are someone different than what we really are? Isn't it stupid not to dare to say to someone else I love you when we feel it deep inside our hearts? You become stupid when you don't know yourself. About insults we'll talk later on in this book. Aside the fact that intelligence and stupidity, as a wrong definition, exist and create a natural balance, there is another common word that links those two extremes called incomprehension. As long as we don't understand that we all are suffering because we don't comprehend, we'll spend our daily lives in a constant struggle within the wrong battlefield, which is the result of our stupidity. Another element that can be added to this subject is called cleverness, which corresponds to the kind of people who normally are not intelligent or stupid, neither mad, but they use the potentialities of others to attain their individual goals. We can also call it as another form of intelligence, but I think it is more cleverness than something else. Some people live on the intelligence of others, some of their stupidity. Certainly there are lots of people who will consider me as a fool, or that I am writing stupid things. I think that they have that right and give them the benefit of ignorance, or accept their fear to read these words and thoughts. At least I am assuming my stupidity, my madness. Some people are lost in their intellectualism, others in their ignorance. This means that we are all the same. The similarity stays at our incapacity to find and accept why we are so different. The Diary of Thoughts, end of part 12. Written by Carlos Pacheco. www.diaryofthoughts.com